Billy, are you able to hear me?
Can hear you.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm getting just a little bit of a lag, but we'll make it go. Yeah, there we go. I've got you now. It looks to me like a fair number of our participants are here, so I'd like to get us started. My name is Mark Rigg. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations here at York College. And it really is my pleasure to introduce Billy Ontomont, who's going to talk to us about From York to the Moon. I don't want to say a whole lot because I really want this time to be for him and the presentation, for which he's done quite a bit of work. I just want to say what a pleasure it is to have worked with him and how excited I am to see what he's going to give us tonight. I have not seen it, though I have been assured by several who have that it is quite good. Billy and I were on another alumni relations offered event, and I just put a little buzz out to him. He had mentioned his excitement about the company he works for and how York prepared him for that. And there's nothing we like better in the alumni relations office than to hear an alum who is excited about his career and excited about how York helped put him on the path to it. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Billy and enjoy hearing from him. From York to the Moon, thoughts on the new commercial frontier. I will help at the end a little bit, take some questions, but Billy, the stage is yours. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for everyone else who came out. I'm gonna turn my video off during the presentation just to keep the focus on that, but let's get started. All right, so I am a mechanical engineer at Intuitive Machines. I graduated from YCP in the summer of 2019, and I started at IM, Intuitive Machines, in October of 2019. So it's been a little over a year and a half now, which is crazy to think about. It's a small aerospace company, and we've made drones, and we are now working on spaceships. This is Act 1, Brief History of Lunar Exploration. During the Italian Renaissance, the Earth was the center of the universe and a terrestrial rock, unlike celestial bodies above. There were the heavens made of a motionless, ethereal gas that was rare on Earth, so it was thought. And the small quantities that could be obtained were thought to heal illness and cure all diseases. Perhaps to the people in the ancient times, the moon resembled Jupiter here in this time lapse from no spacecraft, but as we all know now, a gas giant like this is no heaven. Explanation evidence. And so this was used for the Greek philosopher Aristotle. But Galileo Galilei was unsatisfied, and he would often question complacent views of nature, such as the claim that heavier objects fell faster than lighter ones. He would go on to perform experiments and test his claim that regardless of density, objects fall at the same rate. And he found his experiments matched his hypothesis. And in school, he would ask his professors who taught the old physics why hail would fall at the same time, regardless of the size. And they were dumbstruck. They couldn't answer his questions. He had a natural inclination to question the world around him and really just ask simple questions. So when he got his hands on a telescope, a new invention in his time, he improved the design to be able to observe the stars more clearly. When he looked at the moon, he saw no reservoir of magical elixir. In his writing, reflecting on his observation, he says, "The surface of the moon to be not smooth, even, and perfectly spherical, as a great crowd of philosophers have believed about this and other heavenly bodies, but on the contrary, to be uneven, rough, and crowded with depressions." This is Galileo's sketch of the moon, the beginning of observational astronomy and the start of the scientific revolution. He saw the moon as those then saw the Earth, just a terrestrial rock. And it's how we see the moon today. This observation was heresy in the eyes of the Catholic Church. So for this claim and observation, he was sentenced to house arrest for the remainder of his life, only let free after he went blind and could no longer observe the stars. Galileo changed science. He changed our perception of reality, and no longer were the night sky perfect, it was obtainable. And a bonus in this picture, this little kind of blue speck is the International Space Station, which is about 250 miles away, whereas the moon is about 240,000 miles away. So despite they look close, they are not close at all. After centuries of breakthroughs in astronomy and technology, we're now in the late 1940s, big jump from Galileo's time. This is after World War II, and America has now captured German rocket technology. In this video, there's a camera that returned from a V-2 rocket after launching from the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. It reached an altitude of 65 miles, which was high enough to see Earth against the blackness of space for the first time. The camera was designed by Clyde Holliday, a researcher at the Applied Physics Lab, and he understood the importance of imagery during the space exploration and viewed photography as a science itself. Now, satellite imaging and images from space are part of everyday life. I mean, most notably weather forecast and navigation, but there's so much value in just taking pictures and see tumbling around up there and then it'll fall back to Earth. So this is a still from that video and considered to be the first photo of Earth from space. And this is what I regard as the beginning of the space age. Just as Galileo saw the moon for the first time, Clyde Holliday allowed us to see the Earth for the first time. Now, this might not be directly related to the moon, but these images emphasize the importance of space photography, which would enable us to make one of the most important discoveries during the Apollo missions. This image gave a glimpse of what was to come. The V-2 rocket intended to kill was repurposed as a scientific instrument, and the man responsible was Wernher von Braun, imaged in this video, one of the science taken to the US after World War II. When he was in Germany, when the Nazis took over, he joined only so he didn't give up his life's work. He did not have the same ideology as them. However, you can question his morality because he only cared about the science and employed some awful practices to build the V-2 rockets. But when he was taken to the US, all that changed and it was no longer an instrument to kill. It became a scientific instrument. And he was tasked with the development of the Saturn V rocket. So with the space race underway and the Soviet Union claiming achievements over the US, including the first satellite, man and woman in space, the US was lagging. And despite having the architect of the first ballistic rocket, JFK set a goal to land men on the moon to beat the Russians, and so we could claim dominance in the space domain. I will play this video of him giving his famous speech.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
And that's just really true. I mean, we just do things because we can, because it's something that is possible. So with this proclamation, America began testing rocket engines stemming from the V-2 under von Braun's guidance. Stennis Space Center was built only within 2 years, and these test stands are massive, 400 feet in the air. And I was fortunate enough to have an internship where I was able to see the RS-25 engines get tested. And this is a picture of that from an adjacent test stand that wasn't being used at the time. But before all this, the Saturn V was king. This is a video of the Saturn V test at, I believe it's the same test stand or one next to it. The big flame trench that redirects it. it's a pretty amazing thing to see in person. I mean, it was so loud and there was so much vibration that it must have shook the spark plug or something loose in my car, that after the test, I was parked near it. My car wouldn't start for about 5 minutes. I had to wait for it to come back online or something. So, and this is what it was all for. The launch to the moon on Apollo 11, to put people there. And this was the culmination of centuries of observation of the moon. You know, World War, the deadliest we've known, the beginning of the greatest achievement of humankind. I just love when it goes silent when it leaves the atmosphere. And then after a few days in flight, the Apollo 11 astronauts safely landed on the moon, avoiding the crater right from the beginning of this video. You can see the dust blowing away from the engine, and it shoots off pretty straight because there's no wind resistance, no billowing air. The shadow of the landing strut comes in, safely lands on the moon. But sadly, the Apollo program ended, ending the commitment to lunar exploration. But before it did, there was a tribute to the man who set the world in motion, Galileo, and this is a video of them testing one of his hypotheses on the moon.
Well, in my left hand, I have a feather. In my right hand, a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago, who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? Which proves that Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings.
So it may not have looked like it. It was a little hard to see in the video, but it absolutely is true. And Galileo was correct, not only in what the moon looked like, but in how gravity operated. But here's the biggest discovery of the Apollo program. In pursuit of the moon, we really discovered the Earth. We saw it for the first time. I mean, it was so small in the sky that Neil Armstrong could put his thumb up and block it from view. And it was just, they were completely isolated. And the EPA was founded in the 1970s. The modern conservation movement started. Earth Day was formed, as we all learned how small our home is. Just some video of it. All right, with all of that said, and the lunar exploration concluding in the 20th century, we move on to the 21st century with the return to the moon. This is a Falcon, or a Starship from SpaceX, the successor to the Falcon 9. And then I don't know if you can kind of see down here, that's the lunar lander my company's building. So the scales and the business sector are very different. They're working for humans and we're working for robotic exploration. So here's a plot of all of the successful soft landings on the moon. And it was Russia and America in the 60s and 70s constantly landing. And then there was a gap in moon landings from 1976 to 2013 until China began to land on the moon. So there's been 138 missions to the moon. 77 have been successful, and that's including impactors, landers, rovers, everything. It's about a 56% success rate, which is a little better than a coin flip. So it's a difficult thing. I mean, the first person described what it actually looked like was imprisoned for his entire life. So, and despite all this, my company will attempt to land 2 missions in the year 2022. One right here and another at the South Pole. In recent years, NASA and much of the world has refocused on the moon. The Eclipse initiative they started is an early part of this shift. It incentivized and refocused private space efforts towards the moon. Even SpaceX, who was dead set on Mars, began to focus on the moon. So many payloads that fly on these private landers are technology demonstrations and experiments to advance lunar landing capability. This will help prepare for sending humans safely back to the moon's surface as part of the Artemis program. And it's really a symbiotic relationship where we benefit from the payload's technology development and they benefit from us just putting them there. And it's just a payload and a task order, a contract to deliver this stuff. They don't provide any communication or data infrastructure, that is NASA, or any landing ability. They say, here's our payload, here's our contract, just send it off. So we're responsible for every aspect of the mission. That's why it's an initiative and not a program. So there's a lot of companies participating in one way or another, working towards this renewal of lunar exploration. And here's a list of them: Astrobotic, Blue Origin, Ceres Robotics, Deep Space Systems, Draper, Firefly, Lockheed Martin, Masten Space Systems, Orbit Beyond, Sierra Nevada, the Missed Moon Express, SpaceX, Tyvek Nanosatellites, and of course, Intuitive Machines. So with the CLIPS initiative underway and with us winning a contract to design and build a lunar lander, will deliver 100 kilograms of payloads to the moon's surface. And as a private spaceflight company, we can procure and create our vision of a lunar economy. So rather than performing one-off missions or having them unrelated, during these missions, we'll work to create a commercial lunar and deep space network communication as an alternative to NASA's deep space network, which is constantly taxed by deep space probes and government agencies. There's not much bandwidth for private enterprise. So we have all the required infrastructure in place already and existing agreements with ground stations. So this is one of the telescopes, part of this communication network. It's the Australian Parkes Radio Telescope. And this was the dish that received the "one small step for a man" quote from the first moon landing of people. So it's pretty amazing to be a part of this private enterprise, but have so much history and legacy of amazing lunar missions. So when NASA said the company is responsible for data and communication, we really ran with it. So this is our vehicle, the Nova C. It is a carbon fiber reinforced panel lander, that's its structure, LOX methane propellant, a 900-pound rocket engine, and capable of delivering 100 kilograms of payloads to the surface. We have our first mission. We're about 50-50 split on commercial and NASA payloads. So it's not just a reliance on government funding. We really are shifting the whole lunar exploration missions down to commercial enterprise. But before we even land on the moon, this mission will be making history. So it'll be the first time cryogenic propellant has been used long-term in space before it's only been used minutes in flight in first and second stage rockets. This will be about a 2-week mission 2 weeks on the surface, about 21 days total. So there's payloads that reflect lasers from spacecraft to measure position, demonstrations for autonomous navigation, LiDAR, velocity and range sensors. So a bunch of payloads to develop and better the lunar landing capabilities. Our second mission, which is the really cool one, will have a lunar drill, the Prime 1 drill, which will dig into the moon's surface, pull out a core sample, and look for water ice on the moon for obviously possible habitation, so people can drink some water there. And then the little guy to the right of the Nova C lander is our hopper. It's a tipping point contract, so another task order where we develop our own mini lunar lander that rides on this one. And then when it lands, it hops off and can hop hundreds of meters around the moon before it runs out of propellant. The big thing here is to gently lower it into a permanently shaded region within a crater, collect either samples or data, and then come back out autonomously and see what's there where no one has ever seen before. We'll also test Nokia LTE network on the moon, which will help better create that private infrastructure to have faster communication with these landers and satellites and rovers. And we'll be able to take 50 kilograms to the surface with this one because the hopper takes up a significant portion of our payload capability, but itself is a payload. So how are we getting there? First, we'll use the Falcon 9 as our first stage, and then with our rocket engine. So this is a time lapse of our 3D printed combustion chamber. It's Inconel powder that gets deposited, and then a laser essentially melts and welds it together into a structure very similar to filament 3D printing. So it's encased in this powder. We pull it out, and it's ready to get tested on our test stand. So here's a little bit of the action of it going. A short clip. Here's one of the coolest hot fires we've done with our gimbaling engine. Went up, down, left, right, and then in a circle. That's a demonstration of our thrust vector control system, which is essentially how we can control our spacecraft. All right, so I want to showcase some of what I've done at this job because it really relates to what I've learned in college and some of the projects I've learned. So this is the first piece I designed, an elephant stand, our main assembly platform for the Nova C. Then a ring gets put on top, which is the connection point between the ground support and flight hardware. And then I'm working on avionics enclosures for our PCBs. Just a little exploded view of how that works together. Have to secure it down very nicely for vibe and thermal conditions. And then it's not just design work, we actually get to build it. So we welded this in-house, sent it out to get machined, and we install it ourselves. It's rapid turnaround. We don't have to wait for any government funding or contracts to come in. This is all on us. Then here is a little test piece of part I designed for the avionics enclosures, which we're still in the process of procuring because we're still working on the mission. All right, so with that, I want to talk about from York to the moon, how it really helped me. York College helped me. This is a little mission patch I made for our Capstone project for a radio telescope we were designing for York County Astronomical Society. But I mean, I work with a lot of people that went to big state schools and Ivy League schools, and no one really knows YCP. It's a small school, South Central PA. There's a lot of aerospace engineers. There's not that many mechanical engineers. I'm one of the few, but there really is something special about York. The student-faculty relationship, the co-ops, the industry focus, the tests that aren't designed for a curve really prepared me for a career focused on space and lunar exploration, even though it wasn't actually focused in that. It just prepared me for a career and to be professional. I didn't have orbital mechanics or build a rocket engine, but I was really able to create my education the way I wanted to do it. A big part of that was through the Graham Innovation Scholars Program. So I was able to create a summer research project where I studied reusable launch vehicles like the Falcon 9 and Starship. Then months after that project, Dominic Della Carpini asked if I wanted to write an essay explaining the topic and publish it in one of his textbooks. And the goal of this essay was to explain a technical subject to a general audience. I used this research project as that topic. I told some of my coworkers this. We were talking about SpaceX and rockets and all this different stuff, and they were really impressed, and they thought it was really cool that I was able to do something like that. Because I mean, it may not be a research paper, but it's something unique and more special than that. And if you go to YCP, it's really just a grade isn't the only commendation you get. You get a lot of unique opportunity. So, and this is a little bit about my Capstone project. I have to give a shout out to Dr. Wilkerson there. He organized 2 trips while we were building our own radio telescope so we could talk to experts about it. And they gave us great feedback on our first trip. We drove down junior year, got there at 9, 10 o'clock at night, had to just get keys. No one was there, get into the dorms, wake up at 6 a.m. the next morning, interview everyone, and leave by 5 p.m. So it was a real quick trip. But then in our senior year, we actually were able to give a presentation about our project in front of the Society of Amateur Radio Astronomers. And this was just, it was so cool to be able to discuss space exploration with other professionals, enthusiasts, and then scaling the largest controllable radio telescope in the world was really incredible. I mean, it was 400 feet in the air. There's a lot I learned in this project, just being able to talk with vendors, which I do almost every single day. There's a lot of freedom where you can just kind of go off and work on something. Wasn't much homework you had to turn in. It was really like a job, just being able to conceptualize new ideas. It's stuff I do every day, my job. All these little moments, these projects, they really diversified my experience with writing, graphic design, presenting, just working with people and being a professional. For me, it really felt like YCP cared about a diverse experience, but also emphasized the relationship among the different classes. So in my art, music, and history classes, they touched in science and engineering and math. I wrote about the space race and the V2 rocket in a music class, which was pretty crazy to do, but it's all related, and being able to do that is such a great skill. It shaped my career in a unique way that it really stands out among others. It's not just you're 300 people in a class and you just do the homework, take the test. You get to talk with the professors, learn a lot. But just to close it out, I just want to say, when I look at the moon, and I hope others think about this now too, is I can't help but think about the people before me that wondered what it was and wanted to explore. So Herschel, Galileo, Newton, von Braun, everyone, they all looked at it in the same face, looked back at Earth. And maybe one day someone will look back at Earth and the moon from Mars, just as Curiosity, the rover, did in this picture. So this is another glimpse of what's to come, possible Mars colonization, more Mars landers, but this is a future endeavor. There's a little view of Earth and the moon from Mars. Thank you, everyone, for listening to my presentation.
Billy, that's terrific. Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest that at this point you also join me in visibility so that folks can see the two of us.
Yes, I am.
I know that the format we're in doesn't allow all of us to applaud, but I trust that the 18 or 20 participants who are here with you and me are applauding. That was really extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to do at this point is to encourage people. I'd be shocked if people didn't listen to what Billy was saying and think, oh, I didn't understand all of that. I wish I could ask you a question. Now would be a great time to go to that chat box and ask a few questions. And just to get the ball rolling, Billy, I'm going to ask you one that I know you and I spoke of. And I do see that someone has raised a hand. And I think in this format, the best way is to type. If you have anything you want to get to the two of us. Oh, they're raising their hands. That's like an applause thing. I'm sorry. I'm so old. A question that I think a lot of us would have, which is just, where did your passion for space exploration come from? You obviously charted wonderfully the history from Galileo forward, or even from Aristotle, I heard you say. But where did your passion for this come from, and how far back does it go?
I mean, it's pretty simple. It goes back all the way to 4th grade when I was 9 years old. It was the first time we ever actually learned about the solar system in detail, had to memorize the planets, talked about the valleys on Mars' surface that it possibly had water, and then just kind of learning about this and then seeing the moon in the sky, that it's this planet that's there and we can go and walk around on. It just was really fascinating to me when I was a kid, thinking about Mars, water, and going there, exploring. It's just, with all the history that there is on the planet Earth, there's so much more in the rest of the universe.
Yeah. Your path has in some ways felt a little bit like a straight line, right? I mean, you right out of school, you're working, but I can't tell you the number of York alumni I talked to where at some level there's a story that's it might not be fourth grade, but it's the nurse I met in middle school, or the teacher in high school who changed my life, or whatever. So I that was sort of a leading question. I'm not surprised it was that far back. I'm glad to hear that.
And it may seem like a straight line now through college, but
Right.
it didn't feel like that
Right.
in college. There was a lot of turbulence and trying to figure out how to get these internships and stuff. But even before that, in high school and middle school, after fourth grade and falling in love with it, I didn't want to be an engineer or pursue this. I was really thinking about becoming an artist, but I mean, it's just that it wasn't so much a straight line much earlier.
Yeah, though I will say, given the materials that you showed me that you work on, there is some art in that craft, for sure.
Yes, there is.
So I'm waiting for some more folks. I've got a few questions here. I'm waiting for some more folks to type questions, but I have to ask, where are you on Pluto?
Oh, that's a funny question, because I'm sure my friends and roommates from college would like to interject here, but I mean, it is and isn't a planet. It's a dwarf planet, so it's its own classification. It doesn't fit in with the rest of the planets, put it that way. It fits in more with the Kuiper Belt objects. It's a small icy rock that orbits far away from the rest of the planets. So we'll call it a dwarf planet. We'll meet the middle ground there.
Okay, fair enough. One of the questions that I think comes up quite a bit is, and I'm going to say it in a slightly sarcastic way that I don't really feel. We've been to the moon. Why not Mars? Or why not something else? Why are we going back to the moon?
Yeah.
And specifically, I think we could ask the question after your presentation, why are corporations so interested in being a part of a second moon chase?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone wants to go to Mars. It's really great. It's the next place on the list, but the technology really isn't there yet. We kind of have to, one way you can think of it is using the moon as a proving ground to create new technology and test it, like the Starship. That's going to take people to the moon that SpaceX is building, but it was originally conceived to take people to Mars. But it's a lot easier to test it first on the moon, go through the Van Allen belts, test the radiation systems, the shielding, the cryogenic propellant. And that's one way you can think of it. And the other way I like to think of it is, I mean, why does anyone do anything? It's something that I and so many other people want to do, that it's just like a hobby to someone. Like, why do anything, really?
Yeah. Sure. Good. We're getting a question here for your company with the two different missions. What's going to constitute success?
What is going to constitute success for our company?
Yep.
I mean,
for the two missions you laid out.
Yeah. So success for each mission is soft landing on the moon and getting communication back to Earth. And for all the payloads, that's the biggest success.
Yep.
I mean, just testing the cryogenic propellant in space and doing that is a big feat of its own. And on an even smaller scale, just being able to get to the point to launch a spacecraft is a feat in itself, especially for someone straight out of college.
Sure. Well, and yes, that makes perfect sense to me. Now, I will tell you, the first question, the next question that I've gotten from someone is, and you may not want to answer this. What's on the whiteboard behind you?
It's just a sketch for a story idea I have. I like to write a lot, so it's just a diagram of that, plot points and stuff.
Okay, all right. I have several questions now. It looks like people have found their way to the chat. So someone named John has asked a couple questions, so I may jump back and forth. First question from John: how do you prevent the other parts near the engine from overheating?
That's a good question. We have MLI. I forget the acronym, but it's like the space blanket material. It's an insulating material. And we'll kind of have standoffs, and it'll look like an umbrella under the lander, and it'll have this MLI to prevent the heat from getting out. So that's a good question.
We have
a heat shield.
A heat shield. Yeah, there we go. We have a question from someone else. How much different is the far side of the moon? Is it in fact always dark?
No, it is not always dark. So, I mean, there's a new, what's called a new moon, and that's when the moon is not visible in the sky. And that's when the dark side or the far side of the moon is completely lit up and is essentially a full moon. The difference with the far side of the moon is it's much more craterous because it points away from the Earth all the time. The Earth kind of acts as a shield for the moon to prevent the asteroids or rocks from hitting the surface of the moon. So it'll be a lot more craterous. And actually China, this past couple years, I forget, it might have been 2018 or so, they were the first anything to land on the far side of the moon.
And I'm going to feed you this. I know the answer to this because, as you know, I'm a bit of an Apollo buff. But can you tell us why would, back in the 60s, why wouldn't the Apollo folks have wanted to try to land on the far side of the moon?
Oh, I mean, there was no communication infrastructure. There was a point where they orbited behind the moon,
Sure.
and they went dark, and NASA didn't know if they survived until they came out the other side.
Well, and in fact, wasn't that was it Michael Collins who just died?
Oh,
Was the guy, of the three guys in Apollo 11, the guy that stayed up there, and
yeah.
every time he went around the back of the moon, he was the only human being in existence on that side of the moon.
Yep.
The other 4 billion of us were on the
Yep.
other side. Yeah.
It was complete isolation, unlike
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. All
It's
right.
pretty amazing.
I
I mean,
have
I
a-
will say that's even still a challenge today, the communication behind the moon.
Sure.
But our lander will actually go behind the moon and we'll lose communication for a bit, and we'll have to rely on the software and the control systems.
Sure. I have a question here. I see that Intuitive Machines is in Houston. Do you or must you go to NASA for any approvals?
No, not at all. I mean, the only approvals that we would need from that is if we're interfacing with their payloads. So we can't alter their payloads at all. I mean, it's like there is no NASA oversight for us. We are fully funded
Right.
privately.
Someone asks, around how much will these two missions cost you? And by you, I assume they don't mean you personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the finance side, so I don't know the actual number, but the first contract, the first award that we got from NASA to start the program was $77 million. And that's about the cost that other companies got as well. So the actual cost will be higher than that because there's other stuff that goes along. So possibly $100 million.
Wow. Wow. I'm just reading off questions. We've got lots and lots of. Another question someone asks, how much work does Intuitive Machines do to calculate the orbital mechanics?
So I don't do that. Actually, one of the founders of the company is involved in that. And I don't know how much work it is because we can plan the total trajectory from the start. And it's, I mean, people learn to do orbital mechanics in college. So it probably isn't too complicated. What's complicated is once we get up there, nothing is as it is in your equations or calculations or models. So we'll have to compensate with the control system and make sure we're actually in the correct spot. And so we use star trackers and other stuff to navigate.
Okay. Someone asks, this is an opinion question. Do you believe there will ever be an international effort to get people, things to the moon?
Like officially, I'm sure. I mean, the ISS built in the 90s and in the 2000s, that is a complete international effort. It's actually, I forget what the other thing is, but it's the largest international effort ever. The most expensive, most countries participating. And in a different way, my company, there's people from all over the world working on it. So we're in the US, but we're not all from the US. We're not all from Texas or Pennsylvania, from all over the world.
Yeah.
So yes, I think there will be plenty of international cooperation. There has to be.
Yeah. I will just say, I appreciate that answer. It's a reminder that there are, that there's cooperation going on at all different kinds of levels.
Yep. Yeah.
Someone asks, for the launch, I assume this is the launch for the launch or the two launches for your company's craft. For the launches, will you watch at NASA or where will you watch?
I'm sure it'll be broadcast online, but I'm flying down for the launch. I mean, I'll be involved in the integration activities at the Cape and making sure we're ready for launch, the testing there. So I'm going to be in Florida for it.
All right. You have to let us know when the launches come. You have to, and
yeah.
we'll make sure to get those out.
I absolutely will.
Okay. I don't know what this means, Billy. Someone simply says, Billy, we'll be going back to Green Bank next year. Hope you'll be there.
Ah,
okay.
Is that from Stephen Wilkerson?
It is.
Pull the check. Yes. So we went to Green Bank as part of our Capstone Project, which is the National Radio Quiet Zone in West Virginia. It's where the largest controllable telescope is. They do a lot of radio astronomy there. I would love to be there again. I haven't gotten any information on it. So if you know of anything, Dr. Wilkerson, please forward it along. I will absolutely fly there.
Terrific.
So much fun.
Terrific. Someone says, Billy, what is one of your favorite experiences at YCP? And let me just say, it doesn't have to be about this program or this degree. Just what is one of your favorite experiences at YCP? Please remember that this is being recorded.
No comment. I plead no. Oh man, there's so many. I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is before I even started there, the Accepted Students Day. Dominic Delacarpini, the director of the grant program, read part of my essay for the application I wrote, and which helped me get into that program in front of hundreds of incoming students and professors, and that was the moment where I was like, this is where I want to be. This is incredible. I can't believe they did that, because I mean, I was failing English in high school and doing bad at math, and then to kind of make that jump and that leap to really be welcomed before I even got here.
Wow. That's an exceptional experience.
Yeah.
Good. Great answer. I mean, all your answers have been great. This is the last question I have from somebody right now. I want to say to everybody, you can keep typing questions. We've got a few more minutes here. And the questions, this question says, a wild question. Remember the old TV show Space 1999, where the moon is blown out of orbit by a massive explosion? Could that really happen?
I don't remember that, but I guess theoretically it could if you have enough energy. I mean, it's like a rocket leaving Earth's orbit, but I mean, that would take a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So could humans do something like that? Probably not. But I mean, a large asteroid might be able to. I don't know. I'd have to research that question.
All right. This next question, I suspect is a loaded one, and you'll probably know who said it. Who was your favorite roommate? Do you know who asked that question?
I do.
Okay.
All right. I got to go, everybody. No.
All right.
I'll no comment on that one.
I've got one last question, and then I think we'll wrap up, unless I suddenly see a flurry of people typing. Are the other companies, that wonderful list that you gave us of all the different logos and icons, are the other companies doing similar kinds of things, related things, or are some of them doing very different kinds of things?
So very similar things, like Astrobotic, they were one of the first ones to win the contract along with us, and they're building a lunar lander. Of the small landers, we are building the biggest one, and some of those are building human landers, so we're not doing that. Falcon, SpaceX, there's other companies trying to compete in that class of landers, so it's really a small, medium, and large class of lander. And
you guys are, you would say, medium class, or are you in the large?
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like we're in the large class when we have to talk about building it, but it's in the medium class lander.
All right.
Like large lander would be for humans, or how the Starship is essentially a building, like that kind of stuff.
All right. And I said, if we got more questions, and we did get, okay, no, one person comment, enjoyed the presentation and the lively chat. And then there is a question here. All these individual countries doing their own mission seems awfully inefficient. How much longer do you think that could continue? Or maybe we could ask the question, do you think that we're going to see more cooperation because of that inefficiency?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have a lot of cooperation, like hardware comes from all over the world. And I don't know how inefficient it really is. I think it might push us to do more. I mean, obviously China and the US are pretty big rivals right now in the world, two largest superpowers. And I'm sure them going to the moon and successfully landing over and over and over again definitely pushed us as a country to do more stuff. So I think there are pros and cons to it. I think it does develop technology, but in a way we don't want to do it too much because it could kind of drum up some more nationalism, but
Yeah. All right.
I think it'll all be all right.
Well, Billy, I think a question about international cooperation is a good place to wrap up. We're coming down to 50 minutes. I want to just give you an opportunity if you want to say any last word to the folks who have spent this hour with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just space exploration to me, and I hope others, really, it brings out the best in us. And it does have international cooperation. It's an amazing thing that politicians still refer to today, the moon landing. It just, so much history and development and technology came from exploring the moon, exploring the stars, other planets. It's how we proved the theory of general relativity. There's so much. It's a rich history that is not just science or technology. It really encompasses all.
Well, thank you. I'm going to speak for the other participants, a couple of who have chatted, given a little thank yous. Billy, I want to thank you very much. Billy and I have been preparing for this for several months now. You have been just the kind of York alum I love to work with. Dedicated, loyal to the institution, eager to share what you've learned and what you care about. I simply want to say to the rest of you who are here, Billy allows the Alumni Relations Office to look really good right now. And I simply want to say to all of you who are alums, one, I hope you remember how much York continues to care about Billy and about all of you. I hope that when that opportunity comes to participate, to respond in any way to the college, you can help do that. And also I want to say, Billy's is a fantastic story, and I know it is not the only one. If there are other people who saw this and have a good story or know of an alum with a good story, please contact me at the Alumni Relation Office. We would love to hear some more, and we could set some more of these up as well. All right, Billy, if it's all right with you, I'm going to wind us down.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you all. Everyone. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Billy, and we'll hope to see you back on campus now that it looks like the pandemic is going to make that possible. Hope to see all of you at Fall Fest. Thanks all for being here tonight. Good night.
Thank you.